The moment the new COO, Preston Blake, called the algorithmic compliance team bloated, Sloan Vance knew she had a front row seat to a slow-motion train wreck. She was sitting 3 chairs down from him, silently watching him drop phrases like leaner operations and agile restructuring with the grace of a drunk guy at a wedding trying to do the worm. No one laughed except him. He grinned like he just invented Excel. If you want to know more about me, my link is in the description. What no one in that glass tomb of a boardroom understood, least of all the COO in his too-tight blazer and disruptor haircut, was that Sloan was the glue. 14 years, 3 CEOs, 2 FTC data harvesting investigations, and 1 internal espionage attempt later, and Sloan had outlasted them all. She didn't wear flashy cardigans or schedule innovation brainstorms, but she could read a neural network audit trail like a bedtime story. Her desk, a battleground of sticky notes and redacted printouts, each one a landmine she diffused without anyone noticing. But now, the golden boy with the corporate buzzwords was here to streamline operations, translation/departments he didn't understand. And Sloan, who had built Vanguard Analytics' algorithmic regulatory framework from scratch, who held half the federal predictive clearance they bragged about in earnings calls, wasn't even on the invite list for the big talks anymore. She watched, week after week, her name slowly disappeared from meeting agendas. No more check-ins with legal, no more data vendor review calls. Her role had become wallpaper, just another part of the furniture, until the day it wasn't. Before we go any further, can I ask a small favor? If you're enjoying this, hit that like button and subscribe. Seriously, 95% of listeners forget to, and it really helps the team keep cranking out these stories. Alright, back to Sloan, the slow-motion implosion. It started with little things. The budget for her algorithmic modeling renewal was slashed without notice. A junior finance analyst, Reed Caldwell, was assigned to learn the ropes, which meant he spent most of the day asking where the houndstooth coffee pods were. Her quarterly predictive compliance walkthrough, canceled, rescheduled, then absorbed into operations. Sloan wasn't even told. She found out when an intern forwarded her a calendar invite with the wrong room number. Then came the layoffs, or as the COO liked to call them, role realignments. Entire departments were gutted, payroll cut in half, HR split into core HR and HR experience, whatever that meant. Every Friday, the Slack status dimmed like lights in a dying town as people fled early to beat the I-35 gridlock. The cafeteria crowd thinned, people stopped decorating their cubes. One guy, Pierce Harrington from procurement, left a stress ball and a cactus on his desk and just never came back. Still, Sloan stayed quiet. She did what she always did, logged in early, stayed late, kept the predictive audit logs pristine, and made sure no one accidentally triggered a federal red flag. Because behind the scenes, beneath the jargon and chaos, her signature was the one keeping them compliant with the FTC, the DCAA, and 3 other agencies that didn't like being forgotten. She held the algorithmic oversight keys that linked their predictive compliance neural net to federal data enclaves, maintained the internal registry that flagged biased data vendor streams before they became headlines. She'd even written the company's algorithmic bias disclosures from scratch back in 2017, after the last guy outsourced it to a freelancer and nearly landed them in a $12 million mess. But to the new COO, Preston Blake, she was just a cost center, a legacy cog in the machine, someone to be replaced by an offshore team with algorithmic capability at scale, whatever that meant in PowerPoint. He didn't even know what her badge meant. It wasn't decorative, it wasn't even internal. It was federally registered, an ID linked to active regulatory authorizations. It was the only reason the company could self-certify on government contracts without being audited every month. And Sloan, she was the only one who had it. There was no backup, no second key, but he wouldn't learn that today or tomorrow. No, Sloan wasn't going to stop the train wreck. She was going to sit quietly and let it happen. And when the crash came and everyone was screaming, "Why didn't anyone warn us?" she'd already be gone. Badge on the desk, smile on her face, and the whole damn house of cards collapsing in slow motion behind her. Because Sloan didn't need revenge. She had something better, compliance weaponized. He said it like he was delivering a punchline. "Your role's been outsourced, darling." Right there in the middle of the cost realignment review, sandwiched between a slide on free snack reductions and a joke about using interns as QA testers. The room chuckled, half out of fear, half out of habit. But Sloan didn't flinch, not when he called her darling, not when he waved his hand like he was swatting a mosquito and said, "We'll be transitioning your duties to a global partner with a more agile data footprint." She just looked at him, no blinking or reaction, and reached into her handbag. He kept talking, of course. They always do. Guys like him can't let silence breathe. "We truly value your contributions, Sloan," he continued, his voice sliding into that HR-approved syrup tone. "But our external vendor will be taking over your scope as of Monday. It's all about efficiencies, and frankly, it's long overdue." That's when she placed it on the table, her compliance badge, black plastic, laminated with a federally registered seal that none of them could interpret, and clipped to a bright orange tag that read, "Authorized Agent Designated Signatory." It didn't beep, it didn't blink, it didn't self-destruct. It just sat there, humming with silent importance like a grenade in a sandbox. The junior staffers stopped smiling. The director of finance glanced at it like it might bite. And the COO, he laughed. "Ah, that's cute," he said. "The little badge, is that your way of protesting?" Sloan looked up, deadpan. "It's not a protest, it's protocol." "Oh, come on," he scoffed. "It's just a formality. We've got people overseas who can file paperwork. You made this stuff look way more complicated than it is." That was the moment he sealed it. Sloan gave him a single nod, the kind you give a man right before he steps on a rake. Then she turned to Chadsworth Montgomery, the HR rep in the corner, sweating like a busted radiator, handed over a thumb drive. "Final report," she said simply, "including my formal sign-off logs, pending certifications, flagged vendor concerns, and 6 months of pre-cleared audit trails." Chadsworth took it with trembling hands. He'd never looked so nervous to hold 32 gigabytes of silence. "You'll want to upload that before my credentials deactivate," Sloan added. T-minus 42 minutes. The room shifted. Current of discomfort ran through the air like someone had farted during a eulogy, but no one wanted to be the first to sniff it. Even the director of legal, Victoria Davenport, who had dialed in late from the Mopac Expressway and muted herself after saying, sorry, I was on another fire," unmuted briefly to ask, "Wait, what credentials?" Sloan didn't answer. She just stood up, straightened her blazer, and slid her chair back under the table like it still mattered. The COO grinned at her, condescending to the bitter end. "I'm sure we'll be fine without all the red tape, Sloan. Honestly, this is probably good for you too. Maybe now you can take a breather, focus on gardening or grandkids or whatever it is you do when you're not auditing people." Sloan smiled, the kind of smile that said, "Oh, honey, you just asked a shark if it wanted a bath bomb." She leaned forward slightly, just enough to make eye contact. "Good luck then," she said. "Just don't lose the badge. It's the only one." With that, she walked out, heels clicking against the laminate floor like a countdown. No drama, no tantrum, no security escort, just calm, calculated departure. Behind her, Preston Blake turned to HR and said, "She'll file for unemployment by Monday." Chadsworth didn't answer, because what no one in that room had the spine to admit was they didn't know what she actually did. Not really. Knew she handled compliance, but if you asked anyone to define it, they'd wave vaguely at a spreadsheet or mumble something about quarterly filings. And that badge, the one Preston just waved off as a formality, that badge was tied to every legal exemption, every government contract, every audit defense Sloan had ever shepherded through the belly of bureaucracy. It wasn't a symbol, it was a key. And now it was theirs, useless, disconnected, and ticking. Saturday morning, Sloan vacuumed under the filing cabinet overlooking the distant Austin skyline. Not out of grief, not some symbolic gesture of closure, just habit. 14 years of compliance meant she measured peace in checklists. Her husband, God rest his soul, used to joke that she couldn't even relax without 3 backups and an off-site disaster recovery plan. She finished her coffee, poured another, and logged into her terminal one final time. First thing she did was deauthorize her secure login credentials from every access point. The encrypted neural net server, the FTC Predictive Partnership Portal, the DCAA Data Vendor Submission Tool, and Vanguard Analytics' internal algorithmic GRC platform, which she'd personally integrated using a duct-tape miracle of legacy software, duct-taped AP is, and sheer willpower. The system didn't even prompt her for a reason. Are you sure you want to revoke credentials set S. Vance Authority Level 4? She clicked yes. Then, like a surgeon prepping for an amputation, she removed her soft tokens, one by one. Multi-factor apps wiped, YubiKey disassociated. The credential dongle she kept in the hollowed-out dictionary on her bookshelf, tossed into an old Altoids tin and sealed shut with Gorilla Tape. By 11 a.m., she was digitally dead to them. She didn't mourn it, even flinch. Instead, she opened her Rolodex, an actual Rolodex, leather-bound, heavy as a brick, and containing numbers she hadn't dialed in years. She flipped past former vendors, one incompetent CEO, and a dog-eared card labeled FTC Grant Montgomery, ask about softball game. She stopped a name written in all caps. Quinn Gallagher, OIG liaison/do not use unless fire. Sloan picked up the landline. Quinn, she said when the voice answered. It's Sloan Vance. A pause. Oh boy, Quinn exhaled. Please don't tell me it's Friday at 5 o'clock again. No, they outsourced me. You're joking. Sloane's voice didn't change. Told me I was non-essential. Took my badge, rolled my function into a third-party vendor with no domestic credentials. Quinn groaned. Oh, Jesus, Sloan, I've already removed myself from all active authorizations. My credentials will register null on your end by Monday morning. Silence. Quinn said, Do I need to pull the exemption ledger? I would. Quinn sighed somewhere between exasperation and awe. You always said they didn't understand what you were holding together. They never read the footnotes, Sloan said, sipping her coffee. Anyway, just wanted to make sure OIG wasn't caught off guard when things start slipping. They're not going to survive this, Quinn muttered. Not if those exemptions are still tied to your designation. They are, and they were. 5 years ago, Vanguard Analytics had royally botched a federal filing, missed a deadline, submitted outdated contractor information, and nearly triggered an FTC field audit that would have gutted their defense contracts. Legal panicked. Finance threw up their hands. The then COO took a mental health sabbatical mid-crisis. And Sloan, she stayed in the office for 76 straight hours. She called a friend of a friend in Washington, dug through 3 volumes of cross-agency exceptions, crafted a regulatory workaround with the finesse of a surgeon and the paranoia of a doomsday prepper. The result, a one-time exemption status with provisional renewal. But it came with a catch. It had to be maintained by a federally certified algorithmic compliance officer with personally verifiable tenure, her. It was her name on the agreement, her designation in the signature box, and every year since she had quietly recertified it with her own hand. She never told the execs how fragile it all was. Why would she? They treated her like a walking firewall, something to be installed, ignored, and only acknowledged when someone tripped an alert. But now the firewall had logged out, gracefully, permanently. She made 2 more calls that day, one to her lawyer, just a friendly touch base, one to a former SEC examiner who owed her a favor. Neither call was vengeful. She didn't threaten, didn't rant, just made sure they knew. Sloan Vance no longer represented Vanguard Analytics in any legal, regulatory, or fiduciary capacity. Any future attempts to use her signature, designation, or credential would be considered unauthorized. It wasn't a warning. It was a line in the sand drawn with surgical precision. That night, she poured herself a glass of wine and opened the windows, let the dry Austin fall air in. Her phone buzzed with a notification from LinkedIn. Preston Blake, COO at Vanguard Analytics, just posted a new article. How smart outsourcing saved us millions. She didn't click it. Instead, she opened her email, wrote a 1-sentence message, and BCC'd it to 3 agencies. Subject: Change of Algorithmic Compliance Officer Notification. Body: Effective immediately, I no longer serve as designated algorithmic compliance liaison for Vanguard Analytics. Signature: Sloan Vance, no drama, no commentary. She hit send, closed the laptop, and watched the leaves swirl across her backyard. The silence wasn't empty. It was loaded. Monday morning hit like a brick through a stained glass window. The founder, Garrison Wells, was in the office by 7:12 a.m., 2 hours earlier than usual and 5 hours earlier than he liked to deal with anyone under the age of 60. His usual entrance involved a slow stroll, a lukewarm oat milk latte, and a half smile to the receptionist. Today came in hauling a leather laptop case like it owed him money, face pale and jaw tight enough to bend steel. He didn't stop to greet anyone, just marched straight into the CEO's office and slammed the door. The sound echoed down the hallway and startled the new receptionist into dropping her Starbucks. By 7:18, the CEO, Bryce Sterling, emerged, tie askew, holding a printed email with both hands like it was a ransom note. Few department heads had started arriving. Finance, ops, IT, most still chewing breakfast. They all watched him shuffle toward the boardroom like someone just told him they'd canceled Christmas. At 7:24, an emergency all-hands call went out to legal and HR. The subject line, urgent. Immediate compliance issue level red. Level red hadn't been used since 2019. Sloan knew because she'd written the protocol. At 8:03, Preston sauntered in wearing a cobalt blue blazer and an expression that screamed, "I've been up since 5 o'clock closing deals." He barely had time to adjust his chair before Garrison barked, "Explain this," and slammed down the printed email. Preston blinked at it. "Unfiled algorithmic compliance confirmations," he read aloud. "What the hell does that mean?" "It means," Garrison growled, "the FTC sent a certified federal notice to my home address saying our Q4 regulatory position is in non-compliance, our federal predictive exemptions are under review, and our data vendor status with DARPA has been suspended pending clarification." Preston chuckled. "Oh, come on. It's probably just some system hiccup from when Sloan left. Maybe she forgot to log out or file her last little audit checklist. Her exit tantrum, you know." Bryce didn't laugh. The room didn't breathe. Finally, VP of Finance cleared his throat. Sir, there's more." He turned his laptop toward Bryce, who squinted at the screen, then turned gray. "This morning," the VP said, "our federal vendor portal access was revoked. All of it. We've been locked out of the SAM.gov predictive submission site, and we can't log into the neural net audit portal to retrieve the September clearance. The badge ID on file, Sloan's, is marked inactive." Preston leaned back in his chair, waving a dismissive hand. "So, reactivate it." "We can't," the VP said. "Her badge wasn't just a company credential, it was a federally verified algorithmic compliance liaison ID. He paused, letting the words hang. "She was our designated compliance officer, the only one registered across all contracts." The silence cracked. Bryce slowly turned to Garrison, who was already rubbing his temples like he had a migraine that could sue. "You mean?" Bryce asked. "She was the only one legally allowed to file our quarterly reports." "Yes." "And sign our self-certifications." "Yes." "And authorize exemption renewals." "Yes." Garrison stood up so fast his chair wheeled into the wall. Why the hell didn't anyone else have that clearance? Legal finally spoke up, Victoria Davenport, who had survived 2 hostile takeovers and 1 office fire by sheer force of will. Because she told you all 2 years ago duplicating her designation would require a 6-month training program, background checks, and federal re-registration. She brought it up in the Q2 compliance review, the one you skipped to go wine tasting. Preston raised his hands. "So what? We're stalled for a day? Just resubmit her credentials and say she's still active." Victoria blinked. "That would be fraud." Garrison slammed his hand on the table. "Get her back in." "She resigned." "Then call her." Victoria didn't blink. "She's not answering. And by the way, she already filed a formal removal of designation with the FTC, DARPA, and the DCAA. As of 9:04 a.m. today, Sloan Vance is no longer affiliated with Vanguard Analytics." That was the moment it started to sink in. Sloan hadn't just left a job. She'd walked away from a nuclear reactor with the only keycard in existence. And now it was melting down. By 9:30, Chadsworth had begun calling her cell, her landline, even her old desk phone, desperately hoping she'd forgotten to file something or that maybe, just maybe, she'd swoop in for one last act of responsibility. But Sloan wasn't coming, because this wasn't her mistake, it was theirs. Preston, still clinging to denial like a life raft, muttered, "I mean, we can just tell the agencies she's on vacation or something. Buy us time." Victoria looked at him like he'd suggested hosting a bake sale in a hurricane. "The FTC doesn't do vacation time, Preston." And just like that, the veneer cracked. Garrison stared at the badge, still resting in a Ziploc bag on the boardroom table, like it might explain itself. And for the first time since he'd launched the company in his garage, he looked scared. Not angry, not annoyed, just scared. Because he was starting to understand something. Hadn't just lost a staff member, they'd lost the one person holding their legal foundation together. And they'd done it with a smirk. By 10:05 a.m., the entire C-suite was on the third emergency call of the morning, and the word compliance had been uttered more times than it had in the past 3 fiscal years combined. HR was in full meltdown mode. Someone from recruiting had been tasked with doing a quick LinkedIn search for backup compliance candidates, which resulted in a printout of 3 profiles, none of which had actual certifications, but one did have a Canva-designed banner that said, "Audit me, Daddy." The director of People Ops cried in the bathroom after accidentally calling the Department of Labor instead of the Department of Defense. No one noticed she didn't come back. Legal was trying to put a lid on it, which meant vague emails with phrases like, "We are actively investigating the matter and our position remains fluid." One particularly nervous junior counsel suggested that maybe someone in finance could temporarily sign whatever's needed. Preston latched onto that like it was a life preserver. "That's exactly what I've been saying." He barked in the boardroom, pacing like a man trying to outwalk a tsunami. "We've got 6 VPs in finance. Any of them can slap their name on a document." Victoria, the head of legal, removed her glasses. That alone caused Bryce to sit up straighter. "Let me make this very clear," she said slowly. "You don't sign federal compliance documents like they're thank you cards. Each signature is legally binding and federally tracked." Sloane's badge wasn't decorative. It was tied to her training, her certification, and her role, none of which are transferable. It's not a company decision, it's a government designation. "But she worked here," Preston said, voice cracking. "We paid her, she was our compliance officer, so we should be able to appoint someone else." "Not without submitting a designation transfer request to 3 agencies," Victoria snapped. "And that process takes months, assuming the candidate qualifies, which, by the way, no one here does." Dead silence. Garrison, now white as printer paper, rubbed his temples like he was trying to erase the past 12 hours. "Call the board," he muttered. "Now." At 11:30 sharp, the emergency board meeting began. It was supposed to be virtual, but within minutes, 3 board members asked for the login to be changed to video only. Nobody wanted their face associated with whatever this was. Bryce began with the usual corporate song and dance. "We've encountered a brief administrative bottleneck regarding federal reporting," he said, smiling too hard. "But rest assured, we're already working with legal to navigate a smooth transition of responsibilities." A board member interrupted. "Who's the acting compliance officer?" The smile twitched. "Well, we're exploring several internal pathways now." "Who currently holds the federal designation?" Bryce blinked, looked at Preston, then at Victoria. Victoria turned on her mic. "No one." The word hung there. "No one?" repeated another board member. "You're telling us you terminated your only federally authorized liaison without a transition plan?" Victoria's voice was cool, flat, surgical. "She wasn't terminated, her role was outsourced by the COO without consulting legal or compliance." The camera feed flicked to Preston, who suddenly looked very small in his very expensive chair. One of the board members sighed audibly. "What happened to her badge?" "She turned it in," said Bryce. "Left it on the table." "And you thought that was just symbolic?" "She didn't say anything," Preston snapped. "She didn't raise a red flag. She didn't scream, 'Hey, if I leave, the government's going to shut us down.'" Victoria turned her head slowly. "She didn't scream because she had already told you multiple times in writing that she was the sole registered officer, and that her designation could not be substituted without months of training and federal clearance." "I thought she was exaggerating," Preston shouted, voice climbing. "She made it sound like no one else could do her job, and I just—" The board member interrupted again. "Can they?" Silence. "No," Victoria said. "They cannot." The call stayed quiet for a long moment. Then another board member cleared their throat. "To be clear, we have no one legally authorized to interact with federal systems. We're in active breach of at least 3 compliance contracts, and our government reporting status is—" "What?" Victoria didn't blink. "Suspended, pending investigation." "And there's no backup?" "No." "So who the hell thought outsourcing the one federally registered employee on staff was a good idea?" Preston tried to speak, but no sound came out. In the background, Garrison slowly sank into his chair like he was trying to escape into the carpet. Then came the real blow. Victoria spoke again, voice low and cold. "And I'd recommend against assigning anyone else to file in her name. Doing so without proper authorization is a felony under federal law." The room, virtual and physical, went still, because for the first time since that smug Friday dismissal, it dawned on every person in power what they'd done. They didn't just let Sloan go. They'd pulled the keystone out of their legal architecture and expected the building to stand. Now it was swaying, cracking, and there was no one left who could hold it up. The first cancellation hit just after lunch. It came in the form of a curt email from a Tier 1 government vendor, a contractor tied to multiple high-security tech transfers. Subject line was brutal in its simplicity. "Immediate hold on all active engagements, compliance breach." The email didn't mince words. As Sloan Vance was listed as the sole compliance authority on record for all joint operations and her credentials are no longer active, we are suspending all deliverables, payments, and collaboration until further notice. Please consider this a formal breach notice as per Section 4.2 of our agreement. 2:15 p.m., two more vendors followed suit. One of them had been negotiating a multi-million-dollar extension. Now, their tone had shifted from excited to collaborate to consulting legal. The CFO was summoned into the boardroom like a substitute teacher walking into a food fight. He came armed with spreadsheets, printouts, and that panicked optimism people get right before realizing they're off rope. "Okay," he began, buttoning his collar like it might help him breathe. "Here's the thing. Yes, Sloan's absence created a gap in our compliance cycle, but we have internal controls that can manage continuity in the short term." "Show me," snapped Garrison. The CFO turned his laptop around and clicked into the neural net audit portal, or rather tried to. The screen blinked, then froze. A warning flashed. "Access denied. Credential mismatch. Valid signature required S. Vance." He tried again. Same result. Then opened a different tool, the algorithmic GRC platform where risk events were logged. Another block. Then the encrypted archive of vendor contracts. Nothing. Finally, from the far end of the room, a voice spoke, quiet, barely audible over the rising buzz of panic. It belonged to Hayes Covington, a soft-spoken IT engineer most people forgot was even in the room. His badge said Systems Engineer Roman II. Sloan always called him the guy who actually knows what's going on. He cleared his throat. Sloan's badge wasn't just physical access, it carried algorithmic oversight authority. She was the root admin on our predictive audit logs, algorithmic review chains, and data trail encryption. Basically, nothing moves unless she signs it, digitally. Garrison turned to him slowly, like a man watching the floor open under his feet. "You're saying she locked us out?" "No," Hayes said, choosing his words carefully. "She didn't lock you out, she just left. The systems were built to require her validation, by design. You all approved it years ago because she told you it was the only way to guarantee integrity. She never said she was the only one with access." "She did," Hayes said, multiple times in the algorithmic architecture documentation, page 3. The CFO, still clicking like a madman, pulled up the internal directory of authorized signatories. Sloan's name was now grayed out. Everyone else showed as pending. A red banner blinked at the top. "No active compliance officer on file." Just then, his phone buzzed. He answered, put it on speaker. It was a vendor. "Yeah, hi. So, we're trying to finalize the SOW for the March contract, but the approval portal keeps rejecting it. Says we need Sloan Vance's signature or escalation from a registered officer. Is there a workaround?" The CFO glanced at the room, at the blinking screen, at Garrison, whose face was now a shade of chalk. "Sloan no longer works with us," he said, voice tight. The vendor paused. "Okay, so who approves it now?" The silence in the room was deafening. The call ended awkwardly with the vendor saying they'd be looping in legal for guidance. By 4 p.m., procurement reported that 5 deals had stalled. At 4:20, the contracts team confirmed that DocuSign refused to complete 3 legally binding forms because they were all routed through Sloan's federally backed key. By 4:45, the Department of Defense contractor on Project Blackbird. Their message, brutal. Per our compliance terms, removal of a designated compliance officer without an immediate replacement constitutes breach. Your internal status has been flagged. We are notifying oversight partners and suspending all access effective immediately." Garrison read it twice. Then he stood, hands braced on the edge of the boardroom table like he might flip it. "We can't fix this by tomorrow." Victoria from legal didn't even look up from her laptop. "No," she said. "Can't even log into the system to begin fixing it." Bryce tried to inject optimism. "Okay, look, we still have some cards to play. Maybe we contact Sloan, explain the situation, offer her a contract just to restore access for a few weeks while we—" "She's not answering," said Chadsworth. "We've called, emailed, even had someone drop by her house. Nothing." And then came the kicker. Hayes, the quiet IT guy, pulled up a system log from 3 days ago. "Just so you know," he said, "Sloan didn't sabotage anything, but she did revoke her soft tokens, disassociate her YubiKeys, and scrub her biometric backups. Which means," he looked around the room, "there's no going back." One final email hit Garrison's inbox at 5:12 p.m. It was from a subcontractor that had worked with Sloan for nearly a decade. The subject line read, "Who do we talk to now?" Body was one sentence. "We were told Sloan had to approve that, but no one's approving anything now." Garrison closed the laptop, and for the first time all day he didn't yell. He just whispered, "We're screwed." Garrison's office looked like a war zone by Tuesday morning. Empty coffee cups, a tie flung over a lamp, and one of those fancy ergonomic chairs pushed halfway into the drywall like it had taken a punch. He hadn't slept. Could tell by the way his voice cracked when he barked for someone to print every compliance memo from the last 5 years now. He was hunched over his desk, scanning a stack of old PDFs like a man sifting through rubble, trying to find the last beam holding the house up. His assistant, eyes wide, whispered to a colleague outside the door. "He just canceled his golf trip. I've never seen him cancel anything." At 9:47 a.m., his highlighter froze over one line in a 2019 document titled Memo, Non-Transferability of Compliance Controls Clarification for Executive Leadership. It was authored by one Sloan Vance. The section he'd circled twice now, once in yellow, then in red, read, "Per existing federal agreement terms, the designation of Designated Compliance Officer DCO is non-substitutable without full reauthorization through the issuing agencies. The structure is intentional. It is built to prevent unauthorized substitution or fast-track delegation by corporate officers not trained or certified for federal audit systems. Any change to this designation without proper federal coordination shall constitute an immediate breach of contract." And just beneath it, in bold, "This framework cannot be overridden by internal corporate policy. Executive assumption of these duties without recertification may constitute a felony under Title 18, Section 1001. Garrison dropped the highlighter. He stared at the memo like it had just insulted his mother. All this time, he'd brushed off Sloan as just another long-timer, part of the old guard, the over-prepared type who color-coded folders and overused bold fonts. He remembered this memo. He'd skimmed it, scoffed at the language, filed it away in his mental drawer labeled CYA Bureaucracy. But she hadn't written it to cover her ass. She'd written it to protect the company from people like him. And now that protection was the razor wire wrapped around their necks. By 10:06 a.m., he was storming through the hallway like a man late to his own funeral, memo clutched in one hand, iPad with contract logs in the other. He passed HR, who pretended not to notice, and legal absolutely noticed, and immediately started texting each other under the table. The boardroom door was open. Inside, Bryce was mid-laugh on a video call with investors, brushing off the previous day's chaos like a minor glitch in a well-oiled machine. "Look," he said, chuckling, "it's just a little paperwork bottleneck. We've got controls in place, and our legal team's already engaged. It's all standard stuff, nothing out of the ordinary." Garrison walked in without knocking. Everyone went silent. Bryce looked up, forced a grin. "Hey, we were just reassuring the board, letting them know things are under control." Garrison slammed the memo down in front of him. "No, they're not." Bryce glanced at it, confused. "What's this? Read it," Garrison growled. "Sloan didn't just walk out with her badge. She wrote herself into the core structure of our compliance framework. She's not just gone, she was irreplaceable by design." The board members on the video call leaned in. Bryce's smile cracked like old plaster. "Wait, she can't just write herself in. We would have needed board approval for that." She had it. Garrison tapped the bottom of the memo. Signed by me, 2019. I was advised to approve it after that FTC fire drill we nearly didn't survive. That was years ago, Bryce said, laughing nervously. Surely we can find a way to bypass, can't we? Garrison's voice dropped to a deadly calm. She was the system. He pulled up a file on his iPad, a network map showing the chain of compliance nodes throughout the company's infrastructure. At the center, one name pulsed in blue, S. Vance. That name links to every exemption, every audit log, every government-facing document we've submitted for the past 5 years. Without her validation, the entire framework is considered compromised. Legally, financially, federally. Board meeting unraveled. One investor on the call unmuted. Are you saying we don't have a company anymore? No, Garrison said. I'm saying we don't have a legal entity recognized by the federal government anymore. Someone else whispered, Oh my God. Bryce just blinked. So, what do we do? Garrison looked down at the memo again, then back at the blinking node on the iPad. He didn't answer because he didn't know. Because Sloan hadn't built the system to be user-friendly. She'd built it to be secure. Bryce swallowed hard. Maybe if we get her back. Just temporarily. Garrison shook his head. We already offered. She's not answering. She knew exactly what she was doing. And that's when the panic finally set in. The kind that doesn't make you scream or cry. The kind that sinks into your spine and whispers, you did this to yourself. The email came in just after noon. Didn't arrive with a dramatic chime or a blinking red alert, just a quiet ding, buried among 100 other unread messages in the CEO's inbox. But as soon as Victoria from legal read the subject line over her shoulder, the room fell silent. Subject: Formal notification, breach of agreement protocol compliance suspension. Pending review, the message was from the Office of Inspector General. No frills, no soft landings. Effective immediately due to a breach in authorized compliance protocols and removal of the designated compliance officer without federal notification or transitional approval, Vanguard Analytics is hereby suspended from the following databases pending further investigation: SAM.gov predictive submission site, DARPA contract portal, DCAA audit pipeline, Federal Vendor Registry, NTIA predictive systems clearance. Additionally, all associated exemptions and deferred filings previously granted under designated compliance officer Sloan Vance are considered frozen. Any attempt to operate under existing federal contracts, submit new proposals, or authorize government-facing documents may constitute fraud. It wasn't a warning, it was a shutdown. Bryce read it twice, then turned ghost white. Victoria didn't say anything, just sat back in her chair and quietly closed her laptop like she was done pretending this was fixable. An emergency board meeting was called within 5 minutes. They didn't wait for coffee. They didn't wait for full attendance. They couldn't. The boardroom felt like a tomb, expensive wood paneling, flickering projector screen, and a long table full of people realizing they'd just driven the company off a cliff and tossed the only parachute out the window. Bryce stood at the head of the table, red-faced and trembling. In his hand, held up like some cursed relic, was Sloane's badge, the one she'd placed so calmly on the table just 4 days ago. No one had touched it since. It still sat in its plastic sheath with that little orange tag that read, Authorized Agent Designated Signatory. Bryce looked around the table, eyes bloodshot, voice brittle. Who did this? The question floated in the room like smoke. Board stared back, stunned. One coughed. Another pretended to check their phone. He slammed the badge down. I said, who did this? No one answered. And then Garrison stood up so fast his chair clattered back and slammed into the wall. His face was pale, his eyes locked on the badge like it was glowing hot. He stepped forward, looked at Preston, who was shrinking in his chair, and hissed, Please tell me you didn't. Preston stammered, Whoa, we just realigned. Department was bloated and the consultant said, Consultants? Garrison roared. You fired our only federally authorized officer because some 28-year-old in a WeWork sent you a slide deck. I thought she didn't say it didn't seem like because she knew you wouldn't understand. Victoria cut in, voice flat as a guillotine. She told you. You ignored her. You wanted someone cheaper, someone streamlined. Now we're delisted, deauthorized, probably under investigation. The room spiraled. One board member muttered, We're going to have to disclose this. Another whispered, Our stock options are toast. The head of procurement groaned, Jesus Christ, I just signed a deal with the Navy last week. And then came the dagger. Bryce looked at Victoria. Can we reverse it? Get her back in? Just long enough to sign the exemptions. Victoria didn't answer right away. Then she opened her laptop, pulled up a file, and spun it around. Sloane's formal disassociation letter. Effective immediately, I no longer represent Vanguard Analytics in any compliance, regulatory, or fiduciary capacity. All certifications tied to my designation are hereby considered null. I have notified relevant federal bodies of my removal. Signed, time-stamped, already acknowledged by 3 agencies. Victoria looked up. She made sure there's no door left to knock on. Badge still sat on the table, lifeless. But now, everyone finally understood what it was. It wasn't ceremonial. It wasn't just plastic and laminate. It was the keystone, the thing keeping the entire structure from crumbling, and they tossed it aside like a gym membership card. Garrison slumped into his chair. No more yelling, no more bargaining, just silence and the badge. Cold, still, sitting there like it had been waiting for this moment all along. Collapse didn't come with a bang. It came with a cascade of failed logins. By 7:42 a.m. Wednesday morning, the company's internal compliance portal had locked out every active user. Attempts to access the audit trail returned a system error. Signature authority not found. The encryption keys Sloane had held, keys embedded in every certification, every contract, every exemption, were now ghost data. Not deleted, just unreachable. Systems were intact, but the gatekeeper was gone. By 8:10, Treasury froze incoming government payments, flagged for non-compliance due to invalid signatory authority. Vendor portals flagged Vanguard Analytics as inactive. The DARPA dashboard labeled them delisted pending investigation. One by one, the systems that had hummed quietly in the background for years now blinked red. By 9 o'clock, finance confirmed the worst. 6 federal contracts had entered automatic breach status, the funding attached to each frozen, and then the emails started from contractors, from government liaisons, from watchdogs, and oversight reps. Each one asking the same question in varying shades of polite panic. Who is your acting compliance officer? There was still no answer. At 10:32 a.m., Preston went live on an internal company town hall. His face was tight, voice clipped. Behind him was a tasteful bookshelf no one believed he actually used. "Let me be clear," he said. "This is a transitional hiccup. The systems Sloane built were overly complex. We've inherited a mess, but our team is already working on a permanent fix. And while it's regrettable that she left without notice or consideration for the wider team, He didn't get to finish. Because at that exact moment, Victoria from legal disconnected him from the stream. Not a glitch, just quiet, deliberate termination. She walked into the war room and set a thick binder on the table, the words "Internal Risk Response Legal" only stamped across the top. "No more spin," she said. Sloane did nothing wrong. She didn't sabotage. She didn't break contract. She gave notice. She deactivated her access legally, and she told us multiple times that her role was non-substitutable. The room was quiet. Trying to smear her publicly, Victoria continued, wouldn't just be unethical. It would trigger defamation clauses tied to her federal agreements, which would in turn trigger even more federal oversight. Preston went quiet after that. No more town halls, no more press blurbs, just a rapidly shrinking LinkedIn presence and the faint smell of sweat in the boardroom. By noon, 6 board members had requested emergency legal counsel. One had already started pulling out of his equity agreement. CFO tried logging in again. Nothing. The procurement director reported that 2 more defense contractors had withdrawn overnight, citing compliance volatility. The head of HR resigned at 3:04 p.m. And at 3:47, in an office with the blinds drawn, Garrison stared down at his phone, thumb hovering over the call button. He didn't want to do it. He shouldn't have had to. But there was no one left to call. He tapped her name. It rang once again, then to his surprise, it picked up. "Sloane?" he said, voice quiet. A pause. "Yes." She sounded calm, unmoved, like she already knew exactly what was coming. Garrison exhaled. "I won't keep you. I just need to know something." Another pause. He swallowed, then asked, "Did you disable the core?" On the other end of the line, Sloane was silent. Then softly, with just the faintest smile in her voice, she replied, "No, I just took my name off it." Click. Was it no threats, no begging, no deal, just the quiet confirmation that they hadn't been running a system? They'd been running her. She had been the encryption key, the compliance map, the legal shield, the audit trail, the voice the government actually trusted. The only person in the entire building who understood that control isn't about noise, it's about structure. Quiet, invisible, indispensable structure. And they outsourced it for a quarterly bonus. By nightfall, the lights in the building still worked. The phone still rang. But the heart of the company, the thing that kept the wolves from the door, was gone. And it wasn't coming back. Sloan didn't burn the house down. She just took her name off the deed and watched the storm do the rest. Thanks for joining the fun, you office survivors. Subscribe for more switch-flicking drama. Let's make your former coworkers sweat.